Most people meditating for hours every day are completely wasting their time. In fact, those marathon meditation sessions might be the very reason your manifestations aren't showing up. And I can already feel the angry comments coming, but hear me out. Because for almost 4 years, I was that overarching achiever, the one that would have the perfect meditation corner, the 4 a.m. wake up alarms, and I was sometimes spending 2 hours a day in meditation, convinced, sometimes three and more, convinced that the more time equals faster results. However, my actual life wasn't changing at all. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I'd done the workshops, I read every book of Dr. Joe's, watched the podcast on YouTube, and I could explain coherence and neuroplasticity to anyone that would listen. But for me, something wasn't clicking. My life wasn't changing. And it was driving me crazy. Like, how could I spend so much time in elevated states but still be stuck in the same reality? I was like, what the hell? But then I had this conversation with someone who had a crazy transformation in the community, the kind of change that I was desperately seeking. And I expected to hear their journey of their long meditations, right? Their hour-long time spent in meditation and their routine. But what she said completely blindsided me. She barely meditated for an hour a day. I was like, what? How is that possible? And I pressed them. I tried to get their secret. You know what I mean? But what they shared wasn't about meditation length at all. It was something Dr. Joe actually emphasizes, but most of us maybe completely miss. And it's not about visiting elevated states occasionally, but it's about becoming your future self consistently. And knowing that completely flipped my approach. Instead of extending my meditation time, I started focusing on embodying my future self throughout my day. Not visualizing outcomes or affirming what I wanted, but literally making decisions, speaking, and responding as the person who I was working to become. And the results, just by doing that, let me tell you, the more transformation happened for me in 3 months than I had experienced in the 4 years of meditation marathons, or 3 years. So what if you've been making this mistake with manifestation process harder than it needs to be? What if the key isn't more meditation, but more embodiment? So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I discovered the power of identity level change versus extended visualization, and the actual practical approach that created rapid transformation in my life. Because let me tell you, once I understood that becoming my future self was more powerful than visualizing outcomes, everything changed. And I know it will for you too. And I have a very, very strong feeling that this might be the video or breakthrough that you've been looking for too. So write some notes and chuck them in the comment. But let's start by talking about two biggest mistakes most people make when they try to manifest change through meditation. Mistake number one is creating an artificial separation between our spiritual practice or meditation and real life. This happened for me for years. I'd wake up, meditate an hour or two, feel amazing, then I would spend the rest of my day completely contradicting everything I meditated on. That is like going to the gym for 2 hours, doing an amazing workout, then I would engorge and indulge myself on a huge box of donuts. And then I'm wondering why I'm not getting in shape. And I remember this one specific morning, I had this beautiful meditation. I was embodying abundance and I was confident. I was this confident version of myself and I felt great, right? Then my phone rang and it was a client calling to reschedule a session. And let me tell you, within 30 minutes, I was back to people pleasing, scarcity minded. I was saying yes to a time that was completely inconvenient for me because I was afraid of losing the business. But in that moment, those 2 hours of meditation might as well have never happened. Because neurologically speaking, it didn't matter. What mattered was how I was being in that moment of choice when my client rescheduled. And it leads me directly to mistake number two, which was focusing on meditation length instead of integration. Now here's what I didn't understand for the longest time. Hey, what's up my friend? Kevin here. Just a quick heads up for all the entrepreneurs and professionals watching this. If you have been feeling stuck, but you know you're capable of more, I've got a few spots open right now for my one-on-one mentorship. In this program, I'll personally guide you through my identity frequency mapping process to break through the patterns holding you back so you can create the results that you've been chasing. Whether that's more income, more freedom to spend time with your loved ones, or finally living the life that you've envisioned for so long. Now, I can only work with a handful of clients at a time to give you my full attention, and spots tend to actually go very quickly. So if you are interested in making the shift now, then please click on the link below this video, book a call, and let's see if we're a good fit to work together. Now back to the video. Our brains don't actually care how long we meditate. What it cares about is consistency between our practice and life. Think about it like this. When you meditate, we are creating new neural pathways, essentially rehearsing being our future self. However, if you spend 23 hours of your day reinforcing your old neural pathways, which pattern do you think is going to win? Well, it's simple maths, right? 2 hours of new programming versus 22 hours of old program. 22 or 23 hours of old programming. Not easy maths. Anyway, the old programming wins every single time. And I remember feeling so frustrated, like I was doing everything right, at the perfect meditation routine, visualization. I was feeling the emotions of my future self, but then I would have a argument with my ex-partner, ex-girlfriend, or when I would be faced with a challenge in life, I would immediately go back to my old patterns of thinking and behaving. Like, wow, bitch, bitch, bitch. You know what I mean? Why me? Why me? So what I didn't realize was that those moments, those everyday challenges and decisions were actually the most important part of the manifestation process. Not the time I spent in meditation. Because our brain doesn't transform through occasional visits to elevated states. No. It transforms through consistent reinforcement of new patterns. And that happens in real life too. Okay? Through real choices, not just meditation. So if long meditation sessions aren't the answer, what is? How do we actually create rapid transformation? Well, that's where identity level change comes in. And it's completely different from what most people are doing. Now you got to listen up to this. Identity transformation is fundamentally different from outcome visualization. Most manifestation practices or meditation practices focus on visualizing what you want. The relationship, the money, the health, whatever. But the problem is, with that approach, is that it keeps you in a state of wanting rather than being. Are you following? When you visualize an outcome, you are essentially saying, I don't have this yet, but I want it. And we are reinforcing the gap between where we are right now and where we want to be. However, when we focus on identity transformation, you are saying, I am already this person. And if I am already this person, how would this version of me think, feel, act right now? How would they make decisions? See the difference? It's the difference between staring at the pictures of Italy and sitting in your living room versus actually learning the Italian language, cooking Italian food, embodying and learning about the Italian culture as well. One keeps you in perpetual waiting, the other begins the transformation immediately. And so when I shifted from visualizing financial abundance to embodying the identity of someone who is financially abundant, game changer. And I know it's going to change your life. Because instead of focusing on the specific amount of money, I started asking myself, how would the abundant version of me handle this situation? What kind of decisions would they make? How would they feel in this moment? Notice I didn't say anything about money, because that's where it gets interesting. I noticed that the abundant version of me doesn't obsessively check their emails. Okay? They wouldn't stress about spending maybe $5 more on quality coffee. They wouldn't be taking on clients that undervalued their work just to make a quick buck. Okay? Now these realizations led me to another lesson. Making decisions as your future self is the fastest path to becoming that self. And you got to listen carefully, because Dr. Joe actually talks about this all the time. But I think many of us miss it because we're too focused on the meditation techniques themselves. He says the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not to visualize it, to create it. Through our choices in the present moment. I added that one. Through the choices we have in the present moment. It's like we are all sitting in meditation trying to manifest a Ferrari while making decisions that would buy us a bicycle. And then we wonder why the Ferrari isn't showing up. Well, from a neurological perspective, this makes perfect sense. Every time you make a decision as your future self, you are strengthening those neural pathways. You are literally becoming the version of you, one choice at a time. Whew. This is some game-changing shit. And I remember when I put this into practice, for real, I was offered a project that paid well, but it wasn't aligned with the direction where I wanted to take my business. My old self would have been like, dude, money is money, right? And this is a lot of money. But at this time I paused, asked myself, what would the aligned version of me do in this situation? And I knew immediately that the aligned version of me would politely decline and create space for the right opportunities. That was aligned with my purpose, okay? Motivated by selflessness, not selfishness. And so when I hit send in that email, I was scared. My old identity was screaming at me about scarcity and missed opportunities. But I did it anyway, because that's what my future self would do. Okay? That's what my heart was telling me. And let me tell you, 3 days later, I received an inquiry for a project that was perfectly aligned with my vision, and guess what? Paid twice as much. It was like the universe was saying, see, this is what happens when you make decisions as your future self. And this is what Dr. Joe means when he talks about coherence. Not just about feeling good during meditation, but it's about creating coherence between your meditation practice and our daily choices. Because when those align, transformation happens so rapidly. But now, how exactly do you implement this in your daily life, right? You're not just a consumer, but you're an applicator as well. How do you catch yourself before you automatically react from your old identity? And how do you actually build this new identity so it becomes your default way of being? Well, this is how the practical implementation comes in, and it's simpler than you think. So, it's creating micro moments of choice. That's where the real transformation happens. Because there's this tiny gap between stimulus and response, between something happening and you reacting to it. And most people never notice this gap because they just react. Like automatically from their old programming, right? I'm going to let my old self just react and take over. Devil take the wheel instead of Jesus take the wheel. You know what I mean? However, when you pay attention to this gap, you can choose a different response. It's like having a ninja hiding in your brain, ready to intercept your old pattern, right? Not today, old identity. You cheeky fuck. Not today. That's how you have to do it. Okay? But here's how you do it. Throughout your day, you need to set reminders to pause and check in with yourself. When your phone rings, before you answer it, take a big deep breath in. Before you send an email, okay? Before you write the email, take a couple of big deep breaths in. Okay? Before you walk into a meeting, take a deep breath in and connect with your future self. And I started doing this with my phone. Every time it rang, instead of immediately answering it, I'd take a big deep breath in and I would ask myself, how would my future self handle this conversation? And let me tell you, just that 3-second pause completely changed the tone and the quality of my calls. And these micro moments might seem insignificant, like, oh yeah, give me the good shit like quantum jumping and stuff. But in these moments, you're actually actively choosing your new identity over your old one. And each time you do that, you strengthen those neural pathways. You're actually creating a new future in real time. And it leads me to another lesson, which is recognizing when you're reverting back to your old identity. That is a superpower. That is a superpower. Your old identity is fucking cheeky. It's been running the show for years, and it doesn't give up easily, okay? I know you've experienced it. He is like that. He or she is like that friend that keeps dragging you back to parties, while you're trying to get healthy. Like, come on, one more shot won't hurt. And I remember being that guy. He was annoying. The key is to recognize the signs that you're slipping back into old patterns. For me, there was physical patterns, right? My shoulders were tense, my breathing would get shallow, I would feel this knot in my stomach, my heart would race. But these were all signs that I was operating from my old identity of stress and scarcity, and there was like a lot of mental chatter. So start paying attention to these physical sensations, your thought patterns, your emotional reactions. When you notice you are reverting to your old patterns, don't judge yourself, just observe, take a big deep breath in, and choose again. This awareness is actually a form of meditation itself, because it's bridging consciousness to unconscious patterns, which is exactly what we're trying to do in meditation. The difference is we're doing it with our eyes open, in real life. Wow, imagine that, right? Now, lesson 5 is building identity anchors, which reinforces your new self automatically. Identity anchors are just physical cues in your environment that remind you of who you're becoming. It could be objects, sticky notes. I don't know what my sticky notes is at the moment, but yeah, anything specific or words that would trigger your new identity as well. And I created a lot of these, okay? I changed my wallpaper, my phone wallpaper, to an image, my symbol for what I want to create for my future that represented my future self. And I put the symbols all around my desk as well that reminded me of abundance. I even have a Spotify playlist of just songs that would elevate my state. So whenever I noticed I would be slipping back into old patterns, I'd look at one of these anchors or listen to my playlist, and it would immediately reconnect me with my future self. And it's like having little portals to my elevated self throughout the day. Now, how do you know when this identity level change is actually working? What are the signs your transformation is reaching tipping point or critical mass? And what kind of results can you expect when you consistently embody your future self? Let me tell you. So when you consistently embody your future self, there comes a point where the transformation reaches critical mass. It's like a tipping point where your identity becomes your default way of being, automatic. This is where the game begins. And there are a couple of signs for this, so write them down, please. Because you want to know when everything's clicking into place. First, you'll notice that your reactions start to change automatically. You don't have to consciously choose your responses anymore because your new identity responds naturally. And I remember this moment when this actually clicked into place. Someone cut me off in traffic, something that would normally annoy me, especially if you're here in Australia. You would know, all my Aussies would know. But instead of getting angry, I just naturally responded with calm. It wasn't a conscious choice, but it's just who I'd become. I'm like, okay, just go in, dude. Looks like you're in a rush, just go in, right? I was actually there for a moment, like, who is this Zen person driving my car right now? Is it Jesus? Can they stay there forever? That's the first one. Second, you'll notice that your environment begins to respond differently to you. This is where it gets interesting, because this is where manifestation, it kicks in. Because when you constantly embody a new identity, you are emitting a different energetic signature. You're speaking differently. You're moving differently. You walk like you're the main character. You make different decisions. And the world around you, it can't help but respond differently. In my case, I started noticing the different types of opportunities that were coming my way. People were treating me with more respect. Even my loved ones, my existing relationships began to shift as I showed up differently. It is almost like the universe has no choice but to reorganize itself around your new identity. Not because of magical thinking or positive thinking, but because we are literally interacting with reality in a completely different way. But how do you integrate all this into your daily practice? Well, you're lucky I created a 5-step process. So write this down, please. And I give this to my clients, okay? So, I like you. Apply this into your life. Step 1, start with a short focused meditation. 15 to 20 minutes is plenty. The key is quality, not quantity. And really feel the emotions of your future self. Step 2, set an intention for how you'll embody your future self today. Be specific. Today I will make decisions as if I'm already abundant. Or today I will communicate with confidence as my future self. Step 3, create at least 3 scheduled pause points throughout your day, okay? This could be as simple as setting alarms on your phone, and when your alarm goes off, take a couple of big deep breaths and connect to your future self. Step 4, identify potential trigger situations, okay? There are moments where you are likely going to revert back to your old identity, or that's when it's the most powerful and it creeps up. Identify them and decode how your future self would handle those situations. Step 5 is, at the end of the day, review your choices. Celebrate the moments where you successfully embodied your future self. And compassionately take notes, the moments where you let your old self slip up. Because this review process is so important for reinforcing your newer pathways that you are building. Now, the reality is, for me, when I started doing this, maybe at the beginning, 20% successful at embodying my future self, because I would catch myself. I'd be like, damn, I did it again. But I kept at it. And then that percentage grew and it compounded. It increased to 30%, then 50%, then 70%, then it is now me. The best part is that you don't need to be perfect at this. Let's say even a 1% each day compounds over time. that is like compounding interest for your identity. So, lesson 6 is consistent embodiment accelerates more than occasional deep meditation. Okay, consistent embodiment accelerates results more than occasional deep meditation. Now, this is really the key to rapid transformation. It's not about having occasional peak experiences, no. It's about consistently being your future self in everyday moments. Like learning a new language, okay? Would you rather study intensively for 2 hours once a week or practice 20 minutes every single day? And I'm going to tell you right now, any expert is going to tell you that daily practice wins every time. Every single time. Whether it's in business, learning a new language, always wins. When I was doing those marathon meditation sessions, I was essentially cramming, trying to force transformation through sheer effort. But when I switched to this embodiment approach, transformation became effortless because I was living it, not just visualizing it. And thank you for staying with me, but this is the final lesson, and this is probably the most important one because it's about the measurable shifts that occur when your identity transformation reaches critical mass. When your identity becomes a new default way of being, there are 3 major shifts that you will notice. Okay, first one, synchronicities increase dramatically. You will start experiencing those right place, right time moments more frequently. Not because the universe is magically rewarding you, no. But because your new identity is naturally attuned to the opportunities that your old identity would have completely missed. And I started noticing this about a month to 2 months into my practice. They started getting stronger second month in. I think about a specific type of client I wanted to work with, and boom, days, sometimes hours, they would reach out to me. And it wasn't magic. It was that I was finally aligned enough to recognize and act on opportunities that had already been there all along. And secondly, your emotional baseline shifts. So what that means is your default state becomes more peaceful, more confident, more abundant, whatever qualities you've been embodying. Now, this doesn't mean you're never going to experience negative emotions. No, I'm telling you this right now. But listen, those negative emotions, they don't derail you like they used to. Third, and this is where it gets really exciting, your manifestations start showing up faster and with less effort. Why? Because you are no longer contradicting your desires with your daily choices. There is no resistance between what you're creating. It's kind of like driving 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake. And suddenly, you take your foot off the brake. Now, the acceleration feels effortless because you are no longer working against yourself. So, if you've been meditating for hours without seeing the results you want, I invite you to try this approach. Not because your meditation isn't valuable. I love meditating. Don't get me wrong. I still love sitting in hours. I love sitting hours in meditation. It's valuable. I invite you to take this approach because the real transformation happens when you bring that meditation into your everyday life. Like life is meant to be enjoyed, okay? But that's it. How easy is all this? By the way, you guys have been sharing your great meditations and how my content has been changing your meditations, okay? Please post in the comments what you've been experiencing and what kind of transformations that have started to appear in your life as well. There's this one girl who's been posting about having mystical experiences and how her life is transforming. Amazing things showing up. So I'd love to hear all of the stories below. But remember, transformation isn't about escaping your current reality through hours of meditation like I used to do. It's about bringing your elevated state into your current reality through moment-by-moment choices.